Let's uncover the unusual habits of history's 10 most notorious dictators together. Trust me, you'll be surprised. Adolf Hitler, one of the darkest figures of the 20th century, was the leader of Nazi Germany. But in his private life, he had some surprising habits. For example, Hitler spent most of his life as a vegetarian. He disliked eating meat, often looked down on those who did, and couldn't understand their choices. He was also known for his love of cinema, especially Disney films. You may find this shocking, but his favorite movie was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which he reportedly watched over and over again. But that wasn't all. Hitler also had a fascination with the occult and astrology. A man who believed he was shaping the fate of the world was, at the same time, making some of his plans based on the stars. So while he was preparing for the deadliest war in human history, he was also spending his time with cartoons and horoscopes. Standing against Hitler was Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, who was just as ruthless. Stalin was the embodiment of his infamous nickname, the Iron Fist. But like Hitler, he too had bizarre habits. Stalin preferred working late at night. It might have been fine if he stayed up alone, but he forced those around him to stay as well, keeping them the table until dawn, serving endless drinks and never allowing anyone to leave. During these long nights, he loved making his guests watch cowboy films. He was obsessed with them. But what truly unsettled people were his unexpected jokes. Stalin used them as a way to test people's fears and reactions. If you were the target of one of his jokes, you had to be extremely careful with your words. For most, these jokes were anything but funny, because something that made Stalin laugh one moment could easily lead to exile or even death the next. Around him, no one ever felt safe. Mao Zedong, the founder of modern China, remains one of history's most controversial figures. But what often surprises people is his approach to hygiene. Mao never brushed his teeth throughout his entire life. Instead, he preferred to rinse with tea, believing it cleaned his teeth better than toothpaste. He was also incredibly passionate about swimming. So much so that he would showcase his strength by organizing public swimming events in the Yangtze River. When his harsh political leadership was combined with his bizarre personal habits, Mao became one of the most unusual dictators in history. In Europe, the founder of fascism, Benito Mussolini, enjoyed seeing himself as a kind of superhero. He was excessively vain, endlessly impressed by his own appearance. Every day he would spend hours posing for photographs, and he often sunbathed naked just to show off his muscles. He was infatuated with his own body, and this narcissism spilled over into his politics as well. Mussolini also had a habit of constantly writing by hand, filling his journals with long passages. At times, he became so absorbed in his own thoughts that those around him said he seemed to lose touch with reality. Pol Pot, the leader who became a symbol of fear and terror in Cambodia, also had peculiar tastes. One of his greatest passions was French chansons. It's striking to think that a man remembered for massacres would take pleasure in listening to romantic French songs. Perhaps if he had carried that sensitivity into his political life, history would have turned out very differently. Another of Pol Pot's habits was his obsession with silence. He insisted that the people around him speak only in whispers. Idolizing rural life, Pol Pot rejected urban living and saw modernization as the enemy. On that point, at least, he was unwavering. Kim II-sung, the founder of North Korea, presented himself almost like a divine being. His practices rivaled those of the ancient pharaohs of Egypt. For example, his birthday was declared a national holiday, and every household was required to display his portrait. When it came to food, he was extremely selective. Dozens of dishes were prepared for him each day, and every single one had to pass special inspections. For Kim II-sung, even an ordinary meal was treated like a grand ceremony. While the people suffered in poverty, his tables overflowed with extravagance. Francisco Franco, the dictator who ruled Spain for decades, was defined by his religious obsessions. His devotion to the Catholic faith was so intense that he built a private chapel inside his palace. Much of his free time, however, was devoted to hunting. Franco took pride in killing rare animals and often boasted about these experiences. He also had a peculiar fascination with miniature toy soldiers. Those who saw this side of him often described him as a personality shifting between a child and a dictator. Idi Amin, the blood-soaked leader of Uganda, went down in history for his bizarre habits. In his palace, he kept crocodiles and amused himself by feeding them meat. His megalomania reached the point where he even declared himself the true king of England. He was also notoriously gluttonous. Goat meat and exotic dishes were a constant presence at his table. Unlike other dictators, who sometimes showed traces of childish quirks, Amin embodied the very spirit of dictatorship. Many stories about him blur the line between fact and myth, but one thing is certain: while he kept his people in fear, he lived a life of indulgence. King Leopold of Belgium is held responsible for the deaths of millions through his brutal colonial rule in Africa. Yet in his personal life, he presented a striking paradox. In contrast to his atrocities, he enjoyed gardening and botany, often spending hours tending to flowers and plants. He also had a sweet tooth, with a particular fondness for cream-filled pastries. On one side, an innocent hobby; on the other, one of history's greatest colonial tragedies. This contradiction makes Leopold one of the darkest figures in history. Mengistu Haile Mariam, the leader of Ethiopia's Red Terror era, never tried to hide his obsession with violence. He didn't just give execution orders, he sometimes attended the executions in person. In public, he almost always wore his military uniform, avoiding civilian clothes whenever possible. He was also known for his fondness for vodka imported from the Soviet Union. Both in politics and in his private life, Mengistu was a figure driven by power and fear. As you can see, dictators left their mark on history not only through their cruelty, but also through their bizarre habits. From Hitler's love of Disney, to Mao's strange take on hygiene, Idi Amin's crocodiles, or Leopold's passion for flowers, each left a peculiar trace on history's darkest pages. Which of these habits do you find the most surprising? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Best of History, where we continue to explore the most fascinating extremes of the past. And if you have ideas for future videos, share them below. See you in the next one.